Yes, David J. Glass is a uniquely qualified family law and probate litigator. You know, they always said, David, that family law was the toughest of all because of all those things I just laid out. Personal feelings, personal agendas. Is family law like that? Is it very tough and very vindictive?
Unfortunately, it is. Family law is got to be one of the toughest areas to practice in. For me, it's the only type of law I like because I used to be a therapist, and I like getting involved with people's feelings and their motivations and what's going on in their lives, and family law is the most intensive way to get into someone's life, I think.
Absolutely. Well, God bless you for being in there. Do you still sometimes get shocked? Is it possible to shock a family law lawyer with experience because human behavior is infinitely crazy? Or after a while, you get it, it fits, we'll make it work?
Absolutely. I mean, I've been doing it for over 21 years now, and so most of the cases, 90% of the cases fall into, all right, we've seen that, this is relatively straightforward, and while it's tough for you, client, to go through this, in terms of the law, it's a relatively simple thing. But I still get shocked once a month with a new situation that comes up because people, unfortunately, constantly think up new ways to screw up their own lives or screw up their kids' lives. And every once in a while I get shocked because someone does the absolute right thing for them or their children, and that can also be shocking.
Right, but that's the good shock, right? That keeps you, that finally gets the smile on your face. All right, so what frequently will you say to people who are approaching, and boy, we are in it now. August is the big, we got to get the vacation in before school starts type of thing. What would you want them to be prepared for when you're in the summer custody shuffle and it's going to be, everybody's schedule is affected. The geography is going to be an issue, the travel too. There's going to be a lot of moving parts. How might you orient them to get ready to do this in the most emotionally healthy way?
Yeah, so the dealing with your kids in the summertime, and especially when they go away for some extended point of time with your ex, with their other parents, the main problem is when the kids come back. So first of all, you got to send them away, and you have to tell them, go have a great time. You're going to have a great time. Can't wait to hear about all the wonderful things you did with dad or with mom. But when they come back, you've got to be equally excited. And parents, I tell them, they've got to hide their emotions. They've got to hide their true feelings from their kids. They've got to welcome their kids back with enthusiasm. They need to ask a lot of positive questions, and they've got to avoid completely any sort of negative emotions being transferred from them to their children over whatever's been going on in the parent's life.
Great. And then do you then hand them a huge bottle of sedatives or after you tell them that that's what you have to do? Can you guide them a little bit? I mean, are you able to say, look, this is probably going to happen. Don't take the bait. Or when this is said, try to go this in such way. I mean, can it be microed down like that? Or is it just got to be, just stay cool, whatever you do. Don't drink a lot of coffee. Don't watch the Mets before you go. Just stay cool. Which way do you come at that?
It just depends on the parent. There are some parents who can benefit from coaching, and we practice. If your ex says this, then what are you going to say? Nope, that's not it. I'd rather you say this, or maybe let's polish it a little bit and say it in a nicer way. And so some people benefit from coaching, and they just don't know what to say. And if you give them 5 to 10 stock phrases, they can get through it. Other people, you just tell them you got to calm down, or you tell them just don't communicate live with your ex. Do it by email. Do it by text. Keep it very simple. Because at that point, you don't really need to communicate with the ex. If the kids are going for 2 weeks and they're coming back, then you just need to know flights or bus schedules or what time I'm picking them up at the library.
Very good. And I that's a powerful suggestion right there, right? Remove the voice and you remove attitude, sarcasm, condescension, all of these variables that can, set yourself up for a big explosion. And then I'm sure you've heard this a lot, right? One of the first things that can happen is one side says, we're canceling everything, forget it. He's not coming. You think I'm going to put up with you? And blah, blah, blah. So that's worst case scenario, right? Because then the kids are let down. The whole system kind of doesn't know what's going on. Can you do much with a negative personality in a situation like this? Is there a way to, maybe the email's a good start, to build trust and say, you know something, I really used to hate this person, but now I hate him a lot less because of the way we've worked through the past couple of summers and spring break, Christmases, and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I tell my clients they need to treat it like a business transaction. You've got to continue doing business with this person. You don't have to like them. You obviously don't have to live with them anymore. But you've got to figure out some way to create a transactional system that information gets passed back and forth, that deals get made, and that deals get maintained and don't get broken at the last point. And with dealing with those extremely negative people, I just tell people it's completely the opposite of what the lottery tells you. The lottery tells you you can't win if you don't play. And I tell my clients, if you don't play, that's the only way to win.
Wow. That's good. That's good. The willingness of parents, when you speak to them, can you get, or is it difficult to get, I should say, to get genuine willingness to work together with the no longer spouse but a shared parent? Can you get that if you hit the right note, or are you just going to have to say, look, don't expect it, it's not going to happen?
Yeah, you should expect it, and we should be pushing everyone to try and cooperate on some sort of basic level. And so what I start out with my people saying is just, listen, you're just going to have a functional relationship. You're just going to say, when are you coming? Where am I picking them up? How are we going to do this? And keeping it very simple. And then after a number of years, if you can build up some sort of trust, then maybe you can talk on the phone, and maybe you can reminisce, or maybe you can both show up at high school graduation, look at each other from your seats on opposite sides of the auditorium and say, we really did this. This worked out. But it needs to start with just basic, simple communications about the facts, and leaving out opinions, leaving out any sort of smarmy comments, and building from there.
Wow. This is so good. I mean, so much of what you're saying, right, would work in so many areas of life. I hear the psychology in this, and I absolutely love it. All right, this is unusual for me to process, but I'm thinking about it because you've shared it with me in this information. I know you did work on the Kelly Rutherford case, and you say that when children return after long separations, this itself, in the movies, it's like, oh, okay, music plays, credits roll, everything's okay now, everybody's back. In real life, stress, confusion, even depression can come after a long separation. So what should we understand about that? Hey, I'm going to spend the summer with Dad, plus I'm going in May, and I don't have to be back till after Labor Day. And Mom is like, what? That's horrible. Am I going to see you all summer? So long separations returns. What do we understand about the dynamics, the chemistry, if you will, of that?
For kids, being away is fun, and coming back can be stressful. But the best way to get your kids back on track is to simply throw them back into their normal routine. So your child's been away for the entire summer. They're getting back right after Labor Day, and they've got a week before they go back to school. You've got to get them right back into their normal routine. Set up play dates and events with friends, and plan to take them to the stationery store to pick up all their back-to-school items, and take them to get a new backpack for the new school year. And by talking about all the things that are going to come up for them almost immediately in the fall, that gets them focused on where they are right now, what they need to do next, and less focused on, I used to be somewhere else, now I'm here, and there are different rules, and there's different people. And so by getting kids right back into routines, I think that's the safest and best way to try and ensure that they make that transition effectively.
I'm thinking, again, and I think so many listeners are, right? If you haven't had this in your household, you certainly have seen some Law and Order episode or some TV show, movie, something where it happens. Is it ever really solved when we're working with shared custody, or is this always going to be like in a chemistry lab, trying to get that balance just right, tweak, or does it hit a settling in point, and once it does, things can begin to change?
Yeah, for most people, and again, over 90% of the people that I've worked with, that after the first year or year and a half or even 2 years of having some sort of shared custody schedule, everything becomes routine and the emotions are dialed down. And to tell you the truth, the hardest part for most parents is just getting used to not seeing their child every single day. I see them in the morning, I go to work, I come back, at night we have dinner, and I say goodnight to them. And not being able to do that every single day is the crushing thing that most parents experience when they get divorced. But after a year and a half, or even 2 years, they realize, all right, I can be a great parent half the time, and the other half of the time, I've got more time for work, or I've got more time for myself, or to date, or to do whatever you're going to do. And so for 90% of the people, after about a year and a half, everything settles down and it just becomes relatively normal, to overuse a word. Unfortunately, for about 10% of the people, they just can't let go of that marriage and the past things they used to fight about, and those become the problematic family law cases.
If I were to ask you, when you're on the clinician side, think as a clinical psychologist for a moment, how much of critical mental health issues get triggered by family dysfunction versus the whole rest of it out there in the mental health world? You got people out in the waiting room, they got all kinds of exotic issues, but then there's a lot of people in the waiting room, literally, it's because the marriage fell apart or the new configuration of the post-marriage world. What percentage of mental health issues do you feel are family disruption related?
You know what, I can't put a number on it, but I know it's extremely high. It's more than half, and maybe it's 75%, I would guess. That because, I mean, what are the common things that stress people out? There's work, there's friends, there's money issues, and then you've got family, which combines a lot of those things. It combines elements of friends and money, and then your family is who you come home to every night. So if you have trouble at work, you go for 8 hours, you come back, and you have relief on the nights and on the weekends and on vacations. But with family, that's constant. And so I think that's where most problems start. I mean, there are mental health issues that are chemical and biological and genetically based, but those things are still triggered, I think, mostly by family interactions.
Right on. I mean, you get that feeling. You do. And, I get it from the standpoint of a journalist, where the stories that emerge. And, we were talking earlier with another expert on family, and it still blows my mind. I'm sure you saw this the other day. They put a kid in the refrigerator and took a picture of it on Facebook. And I guess yesterday somebody threw boiling water on the face. So these kind of things are from the public. It does it feels like these things are getting worse. You're up close, and you've got the cool head, and you've got the analytical on both sides of psychology and law. Are we getting the wrong message? Because if it bleeds, it leads, and the more sensational the bad behavior, the more we're overfed the one story, and then it warps our view of what really things are like.
Well, I think for sure. I mean, these things, I'm sure, always went on in various formats, because there's a certain percentage of the population who doesn't have the behavioral control, who can't think through problems, who can't problem solve to find a better way to deal with something, and they go for their first reaction. I'm going to hit, I'm going to throw something, I'm going to stick someone in a closet. And so those things have always happened. It's that we publicize them much more, and there's internet radio, there's terrestrial radio, there's satellite radio, there's cable TV, there's standard TV, and then there's all the online magazines, and everyone's looking for content, and for the more interesting content, unfortunately, that's what rises to the top. And so I think it's more an issue of how much it's being reported. And I think if you had accurate numbers, you would see it's a relatively small percentage of the people who act out in that fashion. We just hear about it a lot more these days. Absolutely.
David Glass can be reached at the website ENENSTEIN ENENSTEINLAW.com. I'll spell that for you. ENENSTEINLAW.com. Enenstein Law. Go to www.enensteinlaw.com. David is uniquely qualified, as you've heard in this interview, can answer questions, I think miraculously, from the dry legislative pages of law and courtrooms and, all this officialdom. And at the same time, he's a clinical psychologist who does have a background and expertise in understanding why a lot of what we see happens, or attempting to find out why. What you now know is that there is a way to connect the two. It does bring hope, David. We wouldn't have thought that the marriage of psychology and law could be helpful. I think a lot of people say, oh my God, we're having the lawyers and the psychologists over this weekend and the psychiatrists. I'm out of town. But this marriage is excellent in this very, very toxic and tough area of family law. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. There aren't a lot of people out there like me, but there are several programs that are starting. So hopefully, my hope is that there'll be more and more people who are duly trained in law and psychology and are best able to deal with people going through a legal problem that has a ton of emotional problems overlaid on it.
Well, I'll tell you what, we thank you very much for helping us navigate this, but I really hope that we can have you back on the show when one of these almost unbelievable but graphic stories emerges in the news, and you can kind of walk us through it and maybe put it in a better context and make it less alarming, more understanding, and together, we can get some progress going here. It's a shame because you see it right up close. Tears, the broken hearts. This is not about money. This is not about materialism. These are about human bonds of love and caring and family.
Absolutely. I'm here. Now my phone works, so you can catch me anytime, and I'd love to come on again.
Well, I'll tell you what, great visiting with us today. Thank you so much. David Glass on the Ed Tyll Show. Boy, what a beautiful marriage. Clinical psychology and family law.